Welcome back to the Sanilac flashlight for our first video edition. This is easily the biggest story I've ever reported on, as it affects the entire state of Michigan as well as the country as a whole, as what's happening in Lansing is most likely going on in other states. I wanted to thank you for watching and tell you all what a privilege it is for me to be able to inform you all about what's happening behind the scenes with our elections in Michigan. Today I'll be interviewing Scott Aughney, an independent elections investigator from Jackson County, Michigan, as he lays out his case on how the Michigan Bureau of Elections and Secretary of State have been concealing, altering, and destroying public records, which he believes is to cover up what they've been doing in our elections. Special shout out to Kevin Cohn from Cohn Music in beautiful downtown Sandusky for his help in cleaning up the audio. I apologize for the audio quality in the interview, as I didn't think my guest's voice would be so verbose. I am investing in new cameras and audio equipment so I can give you all a better experience from this channel in the future. Since modern election fraud involves a lot of technical manipulation of data, I'm going to explain this as basically as I can from my perspective as my own investigation has unfolded. So let's get right into the evidence. In late June, I was informed of an investigation into election fraud at the state level. I was told to go to the Sanilac County clerk and request two forms, a voting history form and a change history form. I picked both of these forms up first on June 28th. These forms represent our first pieces of evidence. You can access all of these documents at our website, www.sanilacflashlight.com. Make note of the third and fourth columns in these reports labeled user code. This last Tuesday, August 15th, I went back to the clerk's office after I was told that the Bureau of Elections had been altering these forms. When I requested them again, this time both forms had been altered to remove the user code. Here is my voting history form on June 28th, and here it is again on August 15th. Here is my change history form on June 28th, and here it is again on August 15th. This concealment represents a clear violation of Michigan state law. Indeed, MCL 750.483 Section 5A states, "A person shall not do any of the following: knowingly and intentionally remove, alter, conceal, destroy, or otherwise tamper with evidence to be offered in a present or future official proceeding." Now, why would the Bureau of Elections have this report altered? My guest today will address that in our interview. Regardless of why they're doing it, what they're doing is clearly illegal. Mr. Aughney believes that alone is enough to indict and subpoena both Director of Elections Jonathan Brader as well as Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson. The second piece of evidence comes in the form of a memorandum sent out by the Michigan Bureau of Elections to all Michigan County clerks on January 17, 2023, stating that all electronic poll book data was to be destroyed by December 5th, 2022, which is odd because the e-poll book data is held not by the county clerks, but by the municipal clerks. Regardless of that fact, here again we can clearly see in MCL 168.811, it's stated quite specifically that no poll list is to be destroyed for 24 months after an election. And in MCL 168.932 Section C, it states that no clerk is to willingly destroy a poll book. Destruction of the poll books also violates Title 52, Section 20701 of federal law, which states that these records must be maintained for 22 months after the date of the election. This violation has led Mr. Aughney to launch a forthcoming federal suit against the Michigan Bureau of Elections. Having laid out the evidence against these agencies, let's get right into our interview with independent elections investigator Scott Aughney. Scott Aughney, nice to meet you, sir.
Nice to meet you.
Can you give people a little bit of background on yourself personally?
Personally, I've done a lot of different things in my life, including software, and that is partly how I got involved to where I'm at today. Why I'm here today, but I've done a variety of things in my life, but I have had an interest in data technology, and my interest level eventually brought me over here a little over 2 years ago. And I believe that my background in software, specifically data analysis, and my interests in it have lent itself to the reason that I'm involved in Sanilac County right now with some of your citizens here.
Okay. And this issue has to do with the 2020 election, but also beyond that, because if these sorts of discrepancies that we're looking at now were active in 2020, most likely they were also implemented in 2022 as well. Would you agree to that?
Yes, yes. What we are looking at a process problem. It's not excluded to the 2020 general election. As a matter of fact, some of the issues that are at play with our election process in Michigan actually have their roots in the Ruth Johnson administration. When she was Secretary of State, she is currently a state senator representing Oakland County, part of Lapeer County. But the process is what we have initiated not only in Sanilac County but in about 20 other counties in Michigan. That's the locus standi investigations, and it is essentially a criminal investigation generated, or at least started, at the grassroots level, and we are investigating not necessarily people within the counties. That's not the intention. The evidence points to public officials in Lansing. And again, it is a process. It is not specific to the 2020 election. As a matter of fact, the focus of this investigation has nothing to do with votes. It has to do with public records, and specifically the altering of public records. And in some cases, the unlawful deletion of public records. But it is not isolated to 2020. As a matter of fact, there is no legal provision in the U.S. Constitution for something like this to basically disregard specific things. There are certification issues at both state and county levels. But as far as a provision in the Constitution, I don't believe the people that wrote the Constitution had any clue that it would come to this point where our election data would be manipulated to the extent it is being manipulated today. Not by one, but by both parties, because both parties are involved.
Okay. I just want to share with the people at home my experience here in Sanilac County. On 6/28 of this year, I went to the county clerk's office and requested 2 forms, the election change form as well as my...
Yeah, it's the election, it is your voting change history report and your voting history report.
Okay. So I requested those from the county clerk on 6/28, and I was given them right then and there. And yesterday, again, I requested those same documents, and this time, those documents were completely omitting the 3rd column, which was user code. Can you tell us, this user code column and the data that's in there, what is that used for? How does it correlate between county and the state, and how can you manipulate that data to affect the outcome of elections?
Well, it's very interesting you bring that up, because this is a new crime committed by the Michigan Bureau of Elections. And what we are talking about, the last column, it is the column to the far right of the voting history report. And what was contained in that particular column is the user, the representative from the jurisdiction where you voted, whether it is a city or a township, okay? There has to be an audit trail to public records. There has to be an audit trail. It doesn't matter whether you're talking about Treasury or whether you're talking about election records or any kind of records. There has to be an audit trail. The law says that too. Okay, this particular report contains one of 3 pieces of key pieces of evidence to show that the Michigan Bureau of Elections is altering the original election record. Okay, and the Bureau of Elections fought us on 2 of these pieces of data. What is known as a discrepancy in the voter ID, okay, and a discrepancy in the date timestamp. Something called the electronic poll book. That is when you check in to vote. At the beginning of the day, you give your driver's license to the election worker, they slide it through this thing, scan it, and it pulls you up on their laptop computer. At that point, that is when your election record is created. There can be no deviation by state and federal law from that record. Okay? The Michigan Bureau of Elections has hired a municipal law firm out of downtown Lansing called Cole, Tosky and Stoker. Okay? We have discovered that, interestingly enough, they are also the municipal attorneys for several of the counties, as a matter of fact, most of the counties involved in the locus standi criminal investigations. This is a huge conflict of interest because what have they done? They have worked with the county clerks to oppose us on FOIAing the electronic poll book raw data files, which they never had a problem with us FOIAing it before, but boy, all of a sudden they're opposing us on this now. Why? Because it goes to the case, the locus standi case. They're altering the records. Again, once that your driver's license scanned, that is when your voting record is created, your history record that you voted in that election. There can be no deviation from that point on. Now, what does the report, this voting history report, show? This voting history report shows not only a user ID from your township or city who logged your voting record, because, again, there has to be a chain of custody, and your voting records are not legally lawfully entitled to be loaded by the county clerk or anybody in any other jurisdiction. There must be a chain of custody to not only the ballots, but there has to be a chain of custody to your voting record, and that goes to your township. In my case, it's Leone Township in the Jackson Metroplex. We're a suburb on the east side of Jackson. And my chain of custody for not only my ballots, but my voting record has to be Leone Township. Okay, it's the same thing with anybody in Sanilac County. There has to be a chain of custody on those. All right. So, what does this voting history report from the clerks show? Not only does it show the individual, or at least a user ID on who logged your voting history record, but it also shows the jurisdiction code. That's what they don't want anybody to see. Okay, what did we discover last week? We discovered on Sunday, approximately 10 days ago, we discovered in a county in northern Michigan where we have a locus standi investigation going on, that final column that contains that user ID from the city or township, municipality, but more specifically, that jurisdiction code is not there. Now, what we have discovered is the data has not been deleted, but they're no longer printing that column. They have altered the report. Now, how does that play into now? There is a law, MCL 750.483A, Section 5, okay? This particular law is prohibited. It's about prohibited conduct, okay? And Section 5 of 750.483A specifically stipulates that you cannot delete, you cannot do anything to alter or conceal evidence that is being used in a present or future official proceeding. That includes police investigations and prosecutorial events. If they were going to prosecute somebody or call somebody in by subpoena, doesn't matter. The data cannot be deleted. That's what 483A says. Okay? What we have challenges right now with is law enforcement doing their jobs. Okay? Law enforcement doing their jobs and prosecutors. Okay, now we have, I believe, some solid prosecutors on this case, and then we have some that do not care about the law. There's a difference between there are too many of them, and we have challenges, and I'm going to be specific about two counties, the Isabella County prosecutor David Barbary and the Lapeer County prosecutor John Miller. Both of these guys they didn't even interview. John Miller got his information from David Barbary, the prosecutor in Isabella County. Who did David Barbary contact? A woman in the Michigan Bureau of Elections named Lori Bourbonnais. And he asked her about this multiple voter ID and this date timestamp, because the date timestamp The thing is, when your record is created, it is created with what's called a dynamic timestamp. In my situation, in the 2020 November election, I voted in early afternoon. My date timestamp shows 13:31. Okay, that means 1:31 in the afternoon is when I voted. But what the Michigan Bureau of Elections is giving to the public is a timestamp that shows zeros.
Yep.
You cannot alter. You cannot alter from that dynamic timestamp, okay? So, they contacted, David Barbary, the prosecutor in Isabella County, contacted Lori Bourbonnais and asked her casually about this. Lori Bourbonnais is the same woman, okay, in addition to Jonathan Brader, the director of the Michigan Bureau of Elections, under the auspices of Jocelyn Benson, the Secretary of State, telling clerks to delete these EPB raw data files. These contain the poll record, the polling record. By law, they must be maintained 24 months in the state of Michigan. That's MCL 168.811. And additionally, there's a federal statute. It is Title 52, Section 20701, which stipulates that federal election records must be maintained a minimum of 22 months, okay? And the November elections are typically federal elections because they involve federal offices. Lori Bourbonnais and Jonathan Brader, and under the auspices of the Secretary of State, have been telling these clerks, destroy these after 7 days.
Oh, wow.
After you certify the election, just destroy them. No, the law says otherwise. They know it. They're telling, and what we're experiencing now with this report, by taking this jurisdiction field, which is corroborating evidence, not only put the date time stamp and the multiple voter IDs aside, we have been able to identify jurisdictional discrepancies. You cannot deviate where you voted, and records don't have legs. They don't follow you around.
Yeah.
Okay? We got into it with Sterling Heights City Council last night about the same issue, and that's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard from a public official. Oh, they follow you around. No, they don't. They don't have legs. History records must show not only when, but where. That's the law. And you had some idiots, and I hope they see this video. I'm going to send them the link. Sterling Heights down in Macomb County, the city council there, the stupid argument that these records follow you around. No, they don't. They follow your voter ID, okay? They do not follow you. They do not move from one place to another, because what ends up happening is it starts showing that you voted in another jurisdiction than where you really voted. That is the problem. You cannot deviate from the truth. And that column was the final column because they have opposed us on the EPB. That law firm I told you, Cole, Tosky, and Stoker, was hired by the Michigan Bureau of Elections to impede our ability to get them to turn over to law enforcement through FOIA, okay? The third piece of evidence was that jurisdictional discrepancy. And now, they are now concealing it. They've rewrote the report. It's probably an XML report, okay? And they are prohibiting it from being printed, okay? The data in that column. It's not a hard thing to do. Probably takes two statements in code to stop that from being printed. But they're in violation of 750.483A because those reports are being used, including here in Sanilac County, they're being used in investigations.
Yeah.
And they're present investigations or future.
Yeah.
And they cannot, the law says, and that's a 4-year felony, but it actually goes up because the felony on the original crime, which was MCL 750.248, that is, you cannot alter a public record, you can't delete, alter, or anything with a public record. That was the original crime that we were filing on, but now 483A comes into play too. And what does that do? Because the penalty on 752.48 was up to 14 years, it means the penalty on MCL 750.483A goes up to 10 years, possibly. And I tell you what, this is a lot to digest. This is a lot to digest for your listeners and your viewers.
I agree.
But what is most disappointing is the law enforcement. And we have laws in place. They are altering our election data extensively. This should not happen in this country.
Yep.
We don't have the Republican Party behind us.
No.
We have individuals. We have individuals who I think are the free thinkers, they have the ability to see this. The GOP, I've gotten into it with Christine. She won't return my communications, Christina Caramo. I've gotten into it with several GOPs across the state.
Christine Caramo is the...
She is the chair of the Michigan GOP, and she, my personal opinion, she has some bad advisors. And in some ways, I think our criminal investigation is being played, possibly for timing. I have my suspicions on why, but regardless, you know what? We could have shut this thing down a long time ago if the GOP was behind this, but they're not. Which tells me, because I tell you what, we're not fighting Democrats in the counties. We're fighting Democrats in Lansing.
Yeah.
But we're fighting Republicans in the counties. That's how bad this is, and why I believe it's both parties are tied to this. Because it's not the Democrats in the counties we're fighting, it's the Republicans. So.
And for all we know, you know, I'm just being hypothetical here so that everybody understands that, but I mean, Democrats and Republicans could be teaming up to, as much as possible, put aside as many third-party votes that come in, whether people are voting Green, Libertarian, Constitutional Party. That could ultimately be one potential possibility here. You know, if people are making these decisions behind closed doors.
Yeah, I believe wholeheartedly we have selections, not elections, but I can tell you this, and I'm a former atheist, I came to Jesus Christ
Likewise.
about 16, 17 years ago, and I'm a pursuer of the truth, okay? If we do get indictments, and I think that's the only way we shut this down, is to get them criminally charged for the crimes they've committed. If we do get it shut down, my next crusade is shut down the party system. It has run its course. The party system is corrupt. It is nothing more, and that goes for the third parties, because I was a member of the U.S. Taxpayers Party at one time too. But these parties are nothing but a cult. The political parties are nothing but a cult, and it is the free thinkers that see this. The GOP, there's a few exceptions. I think the GOP, because of Mark Fortin's efforts down in Macomb County, Mark is fearless, and you know what? The gentleman I think Mark is in, I hope he doesn't mind me bringing up his age, but I think he's in his late 70s, but Mark is fearless, and he's not afraid, and his GOP have gotten heavily involved in Macomb County. The problem is we're in a battle with the Republican prosecutor, and he's afraid. He's afraid, and I tell you what he doesn't understand. If he doesn't deal with this problem, I'm talking about Pete Lucido. He's the prosecutor, he's a former state senator. If he does not deal with this problem, he will not be reelected. And he has told people down there, I'm worried about getting reelected. Well, the Democrats moved a woman who was in the prosecutor's office in Washtenaw County. They moved her up to Macomb County, and it has been identified. She's got George Soros money in her donations. They've moved her up there to get rid of him. And you want to know what? If he does not deal with this problem, that's exactly what will happen. And we sat down with a prosecutor in this area here in the Thumb. I'm very, very optimistic about that county. I am hoping to meet with the prosecutor here. We did have an initial conversation, but we hopefully will be filing the criminal complaints in this county here shortly, because the good thing is a woman named Diane Ferguson worked with the people in this county to get the original voting history reports that had the 4 columns. Then she's gone back out and gotten the reports that show the 3 columns that shows the 1.
Now we're down to 2 columns.
Well, I tell you what, we're going to be able to file 2 major criminal complaints, and that is significant. And I am optimistic actually in this county, and I'm optimistic in Huron and St. Clair. We have, I think, a good portion of people to file the complaint here in Sanilac County. Huron County, I think we're okay. We still need more people in St. Clair County, and there are 2 women that have been working the case down there, and I'm hoping we can get some more in St. Clair County.
Sure. Soon. And I understand that when you get into this deep level of data diving, that it can make some people's heads hurt, but really law enforcement just needs to man up and stick their noses in the books like we all have.
You know what? There's an 85-year-old woman I know that She didn't know anything about technology or computers, and she took her shoes off and jumped in the pool.
Yep.
She's 85 years old, and you know what? She learned what she needed to about the reports, and the law enforcement, they took an oath. I don't care what kind of situation, what kind of things they've got on their table. They took an oath of office to uphold all of the Michigan compiled law, not select ones.
Mm-hmm.
What is going on with our elections and the manipulation of the data, you know what, they're making up rules as they go.
Mm-hmm.
They're making up things as they go. And the phony Republicans in Lansing are rubber stamping all this. They did before the Democrats took control of both. You want to know why the Democrats took control of both? I'm going to tell you. Because the Republican Party, under the auspices of a guy that lives not far from me named Mike Shirkey, down there along the Hillsdale-Jackson County line, and he was the chair, he was the top Senate Republican, and then you have Jason Wentworth, that was the top House Republican. They approached Ruth Johnson, who was the chair of the Senate Elections Committee, and Ann Bolin, a woman from Livingston County, who was the chair of the House Elections Committee, and the four of them agreed to give Jocelyn Benson 2 early days, 48 hours, to pre-process absentee ballots. And guess what? That was enough to basically flip the close districts. That was enough. And you know what? The Democrat Party has they've done an exemplary job at taken over the election process, taken over all this, because the Republican Party are asleep. They have bad people in office. You have a guy named Steve Carr from Southwest Michigan that claims to be this great patriot. He will not get involved with this at all. He voted. He tells people how he's against fraudulent elections, but he voted to give Jocelyn Benson 2 early days to pre-process absentee ballots. Why? Because Republican leadership told them to. Are these leaders? Or are these figureheads? I cannot see where there's leaders. I'm not afraid to stand alone. As a matter of fact, Diane, I've gotten to know her. She's done a wonderful job in leading the locust stand in this county. She's the same way. Mm-hmm. And the people that are involved in this, most of these people are not afraid. And you have these Republicans in Lansing that they have given, don't blame the Democrats, blame the Republicans. They have given our election system away. And they've got the Lindell thing going down in Missouri. And just as a side note, I'm not a fan of Mike Lindell. I think he doles out Kool-Aid, and you know what? He doesn't deal in hard evidence. Irregularities are not evidence. Yep. Okay, and you can sit there and do all you want, and I think it's controlled opposition. I think what we're doing on the locust standing, they're going a heck of a long ways to oppose us. Mm-hmm. They opposed us on the EPB, which took 2 pieces of evidence out. We're about to file a federal lawsuit on that, and we're also going to be doing some state actions to release the EPB data. But additionally, this report now, they've taken that column out, mm-hmm. Okay? The 3 key pieces of evidence. They've gone a heck of a long way to do this. Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry, Lindell, he can have his event. I don't care. But I tell you what, I care about shutting this thing down. It is unlawful, and it is the independent free thinkers that are the ones that are involved. It's not the GOP. And then, you know what, I'll be critical of Donald Trump because, you know what, he's picking a lot of bad people. He's got a history of that, mm-hmm. and he's continuing to pick a lot of bad people in this process too. The GOP complains about Donald Trump being indicted, the 16 being indicted, Matt DePerno, Stephanie Lambert, Dare Rendon. But you want to know what? Very few in the GOP will get involved. Diane, I want to file a criminal complaint against Secretary of State out of Sanilac County. Scott, what can I do in Jackson County to file a criminal complaint? You don't hear that from GOP.
No, not at all. I mean, and that's one of the reasons that I've always been a registered independent, is just because when you get into the cult of either political party, it's just a mess. I was in the Green Party in college. Mm-hmm. Get those people together.
Yep,
it's ridiculous.
Yep.
So when I went to my Sanilac County courthouse yesterday to the clerk's office, and I got that, and I saw that one entire column had been omitted, was I right when I said to myself, okay, this looks like the smoking gun here. Like this is data. They're obviously taking data away from us, and as far as like what we're able to see and make conclusive, I guess conclusions about.
Well, I tell you what, we're about to release a letter. Actually, not a letter, let me call it a rebuttal. Jonathan Brader, the director of the Michigan Bureau of Elections, sent on July 10th, his memo, a 7-page memo was dated July 10th. He sent it, according to the letter, to all the clerks in Michigan. We discovered after the fact that he basically sent it out to just the counties they were aware of that had locus standi investigations going.
Mm-hmm. And just real quick for our audience, what is a locus standi investigation?
Locus standi, actually, it's a Latin term. There's multiple meanings, but basically you can look at it a couple of ways. That you have the right to be heard. That's what it is in there. It's in a couple terminologies I've seen, but basically what it means is in standing status.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I would not be able to file a criminal complaint in Sanilac County.
Okay.
Because I'm not a citizen, I'm not a resident of Sanilac County. However, anybody that lives in the county would have locus standi. They would have in standing status or the right to be heard in Sanilac County. And that includes filing a criminal complaint. That's what the right to be heard is. I have a complaint I want to file. So, but going back to this, and that's, if I may follow up on locus standi, it's not just the people. The investigation, we're trying to get the counties to stand up to the state, where the counties have locus standi. And so it's kind of a unique thing. It's the small against the large. But Jonathan Brader, his letter, we are sending that out to the clerks, and this rebuttal. And I got a feeling they're going to come after me. We have formed a nonprofit called Citizens for Electoral Justice. It's a 501c4 nonprofit, and we're filing some of our legal action under this, as well as filing appeals with township and cities to get the EPB raw data files. But to your point, are we over the target with it? Absolutely. They're going a long ways to oppose us. Lori Bourbonnais, she posed the question to David Barbary, the prosecutor in Isabella County. Are you going to be seeking prosecution? Now, why would she ask a question like that? You know what? This is a guy who was told, they're telling the clerks to unlawfully delete these EPB files. They're supposed to be retained for 24 months by state law, 22 months by federal law for the federal elections. He ignored it. Okay, he interviewed her like she was a casual witness. This is a guy with a law degree. You want justice in this country? Get rid of the requirements that you got to be a member of the Bar Association to be a prosecutor in Michigan or to practice law. Let the free market system work. Why can't we have training on the job? Training on the job, and then go out on our own to practice law and represent people for, $30 an hour versus $300.
I've always said the same thing too, especially when my mother was dealing with a tax issue. Anybody can just, completely educate themselves in one microcosm of law and be an expert on that. It should take maybe like a couple of weeks, honestly, but it sounds like you've got a pretty good handle as far as like election integrity, as well as the whole world of esoteric, variables and things that are going into these reports, as well as the identifiers. And the identifiers seem to be where this is at. I went to my Sanilac County Board of Commissioners meeting yesterday, and I brought this up, and all of my commissioners were very, very interested in this, all of them. And then when it got to the clerk, or rather the representative who was there for the clerk that day, I asked her, well, who's in charge of maintaining this data? Because I had just gotten a copy of that from her that day, and I asked her what happened to the user code, and she acted like she didn't know.
They did not notify any of the clerks that this change happened.
Okay, so for the record then, Sanilac County's clerk is completely absolved of any responsibility as far as that is concerned. So to all of my county commissioners who are watching this, I'm just going to say this: you don't have anything to lose here. This is something that we all need to stand together and work towards fixing. And you're not in any trouble. There's no excuse not to take this head on.
Absolutely not. I have spoken with the Sanilac County clerk, and I We just had she's been very open to hearing about what is going on. There's been other clerks in the state of Michigan with similar responses to hers. And that's all we have asked. The Board of Commissioners, I have been asked to speak before a couple boards now, and I'd be more than happy to come speak before the Sanilac Board of Commissioners if they want to put this on the agenda. I think it's important to understand that these commissioners understand, because you know what, the public records, you can't alter these things. If you did this in the Treasury, they would shut you down and have you investigated for, you know, anything from embezzlement to whatever. If you had a gas station that was not properly synchronized, the county would shut it down, or the state of Michigan would shut it down if it's not properly synchronized. How does the Michigan Bureau of Elections get away with this? Do you want to know what we discovered on the EPB and why they're opposing this whole thing? The software that is being used on these electronic poll book, the laptop computers, okay? They downloaded the software the night before. We now know that this software is dialing out during the election. It is dialing out at, or it is attempting to communicate out, not by modem or anything. It is attempting to initiate a communication protocol, okay, through something called .NET Framework. And it is being done at intervals, 15-minute intervals, okay? And what we believe is happening is attempting to dump data from a table called voter details. There's no reason that voter details should be in a log unless you are trying to impact or do something with data in those particular tables.
And would those tables include the party to which you are registered?
The party to which you are registered. It is possible. I have not seen the voter details table, so I cannot clearly identify that. I can tell you this. That information is not even tracked anymore, to my knowledge. At least it's not on the EPBs. The EPB does not track a party affiliation per se. And but all I can tell you is this: that software should not be programmed to do this. Jonathan Brader, in his 7-page letter, talked about pop-up screens. Oh, it's really just a pop-up screen and everything else. A pop-up screen is not going to generate an error log file, okay? Because what we do know, these are error logs. They're not successful logs. If you have success, it's not going to generate an error log, which means what? Most of these EPBs are successful in dumping data. All right? This is how they're cheating now. You know what? I fully believe the tabulators. I have a difference on how they were doing it with the tabulators, including Antrim County, but how they're doing it now, because remember, they got 9 days to do these absentees now and everything else. But if you dump this data out during the election process on who has come in to vote, you will know by 6 o'clock at night who hasn't come in, who would be available to, I don't care whether it's fill out an absentee ballot or call them up, give them a ride into the thing. This is the manipulation of elections. The Republican Party does not care about this, okay? They don't care. I could use a lot stronger language. I'm not going to on your show. But they don't care, okay? Christina Caramo, the GOP chair, she doesn't return any contacts or anything else. She doesn't even understand how this investigation works.
No.
She has a bad advisor named Phil O'Halloran, who is the chair of the State Election Integrity Committee, okay? He has no clue about this. He's arrogant and prideful. Instead, they talk about those ballots out of Muskegon. Fine. We've known about those ballot problems for years. It happened not just in Muskegon. We know that with TCF. We know a variety of other places, okay? What came to light with that? There was one thing that came to light: the fact that Michigan State Police aren't doing a thing with it. Okay, which is the point. Dana Nessel doesn't want anything done. The police, do you know what Sterling Heights Police told the complainants there, the plaintiffs? Why don't you call the Attorney General? No, the Attorney General has a conflict of interest. She represents the Michigan Bureau of Elections legally. She cannot investigate for criminal charges an entity that she represents. Secondly, she's investigating the investigators, whether it be the 16, whether it be Matt DePerl, Stephanie Lambert, Dare Rendon. There's a huge conflict of interest. You want to know what it is with these police departments and the prosecutors? They don't want culpability. They don't want to be held accountable. If they take the reports, as the law says, MCL 168.941, peace officers, any police officer must instigate proceedings. That includes starting an investigation, taking a report. That's what the law says.
What specific law is that? What code?
MCL 168.941.
MCL 168.941.
941. And that says, that's in the election law. There's actually another law in another part of the Michigan compiled law that basically says the same thing. If somebody comes to you with a complaint, you need to implement proceedings, okay? Mm-hmm. That includes taking a report. Now, there's a difference between something that is clearly obvious that is not a complaint, but you want to know if they won't look at our election stuff. Not all departments. We have some that are doing it, okay? We have had very good response in Huron County. I'm very optimistic in St. Clair. I think we're going to be okay in Sanilac, but Lapierre's been an absolute disaster. The woman over there that has been spearheading the locust standee in that county, the law enforcement have told her to get lost. Mm-hmm. They will not take the reports. And you want to know what? That's because of that rotten prosecutor, John Miller, over in Lapeer County. I hope he watches this. I'm going to send his office the link.
Is he Soros funded?
John Miller, he's a Republican.
Yeah, still.
Yeah, right. But do we know? I have no idea. All I know is this. Barbary in Isabella County, Jarzeka and Jackson, Miller in Lapeer, and possibly Lucido and Macomb, they took an oath of office. They took an oath of office. And that is the next thing. We have a gentleman in Macomb County, a woman in Jackson County, working the whole angle with the oaths of office. And I tell you what, I'm hoping we can get a little further with these oaths of office. They need to be held accountable to their oaths. And Michael Butts is a gentleman from Macomb County, and Jennifer Smith from Jackson County have been foiling oaths of office as well as other people. But you know what? Today, you have Republicans, Democrats, doesn't matter. The oaths of office is just, you know what? It's a rubber stamp. That's it. It means nothing to these people. So
your head must hurt more than mine.
Let me tell you, my life is I have moved. My life is poverty. I struggle because I gave up most of my income, my living. I was a residential contractor, and I'm a musician. I was hoping to get my music career going, and I've had to give most of that up because of this investigation. I'm a volunteer. I've gotten donations from people, which has been extremely, extremely helpful. But I tell you what, the garbage I have to put up with because I'm going head to head with these public officials. And you know what? I have to worry about tap dancing over their feelings. And these are Republicans.
Yeah.
And I have to tap dance going over their feelings. And you know what? I don't care about your feelings. I care about the rule of law. What does the law stipulate?
Yeah.
And that is the biggest problem that myself, Diane Ferguson in Sanilac County, and people leading the locust standing investigations in all the counties that were currently involved, that is probably the biggest challenge, is dealing with the public officials. And it's been, needless to say, an extensive challenge.
So just to the average, ma and pa America living in Sanilac County right now, what can we do as citizens to get this looked at by our sheriff?
Well, I tell you what, we're not in Sanilac County. We have a couple municipal police departments, and what I'd like to do is file with a couple of them, in addition to the sheriff's department. Okay, because we put all our eggs in one basket, we run the risk of the cases not being seen or heard and everything else. So. We want law enforcement to do their jobs. That means taking the complaint, putting it into a case, and hopefully the prosecutor sitting down with not only the plaintiffs in Sanilac County, but the whistleblowers, myself, and a woman from Election Integrity Force named Joanne, who I work side by side with. She is excellent. And Election Integrity Force is probably, I think by far, the best election integrity group out there right now. And they don't get a lot of, I can tell you this, they don't get the money. But I tell you what, they're in the trenches. And that is the critical thing. But as far as your people in Sanilac, I can tell you this, hey, will you bring the whistleblower and, can they come in and have a public showing on what is going on? Can we file a criminal complaint too? If they don't, if they haven't already enlisted with Diane Ferguson in Sanilac County, I think it's important they can either try to get a hold of her. They can get a hold of us through Election Integrity Force. We do have an email address for Citizens for Electoral Justice, and that is locuststandy83@gmail.com. That's LOCUSSTAN as in Nancy DI. locuststandy83@gmail.com. But we need everybody, as many people as possible, to file the criminal complaints. You know, Diane, I want to file a criminal complaint against the Secretary of State, Bureau of Elections, whoever specifics, for altering my public record. And we need them, and we need as many public presentations about this as possible. We did do one at a church in northwest Sanilac County. I think it's been probably 2 months ago. We did a public presentation, but I have no problem coming up and doing another one. We need the complaints, and we need people eventually to call the prosecutor's office and say, we need you to sit down with us, the plaintiffs, and us, the citizens, and we need you to bring in the whistleblowers to explain this. And you want to know what? We're not asking the prosecutor in Sanilac County, nor the Sanilac Sheriff's Department or Sandusky Police. We're not asking them to go tear down the entire state government in Lansing. We're asking them to participate as part of a coalition with other county law enforcement and prosecutors, and just do 1 or 2 subpoenas.
Yeah.
We know who the players are. We will come and tell the prosecutors, here are the players, here are the ones responsible. Call them in, try to get specifics. And that is how, because the good thing about rules of evidence, something called rules of evidence, you can actually share evidence across county lines if you're working basically a similar investigation. And that was the point of the locus standi, is to get it in multiple counties. That way you can share evidence. The prosecutors they can all share resources. They don't have to go after the state government on their own.
So I guess right now, what, as far as you are concerned, what kind of legal team do you have? Do you have anyone?
We have a federal attorney that we're about to file a federal lawsuit regarding the EPB data. Okay, we're about to file that. And we are actually working, we've got some other legal counsel that we're trying to enlist, but we're filing a lot of legal stuff on our own. We wrote our own appeals against township boards for denying us the EPB data. We are filing, we are in the process of filing and developing what's called a writ of mandamus. And writ of mandamus is basically legal action against a government entity, usually a government body of some sort. And it basically stipulates that, hey, this government agency or this government official is not doing what they're legally supposed to be doing. I am entitled to have this as a citizen, or I am entitled to have this as a resident of Sanilac County, or anything else. And the mandamus, now most people associate a mandamus with the state government, which is fine. Yes, that's true. You have to file a mandamus against the state government in what's called the Court of Claims or the Court of Appeals. But you can file a mandamus against local government officials, and that's where we are currently beginning to proceed forward. And it's going to be, I'm interested to see how this works out. And I tell you what, the worst nightmare that these courts could ever perceive is the public starting to apply the law by themselves without public officials, without lawyers, and anything else. That is where we become stronger. We have had to become cops in this election, in this locus standi investigation, and we're having to become lawyers. I think we all need to. We need filing things pro se, because that's the worst nightmare they could expect, is the public starting to become their own lawyers and knowing the law better than them. You know what? Because you go to law school doesn't mean a thing.
No.
Doesn't mean a thing. They call it a practice for a reason. Any lawyer, any reasonable lawyer will tell you they really don't know until they start practicing it. okay, until they start reading the stuff on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And we have had to do this in this election investigation, this locus standi investigation. We have had to learn the election law, we've had to learn public records law, we had to learn part of the criminal code. So there's a variety of things, and we become stronger citizens when we're able to get into courts on our own and file pro se.
Okay, yeah, I would agree with that completely. I mean, they have to take it, and it's, you know, if you have local standing, like you said, they have to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I guess right now, it seems to be the best thing we can do is try our best to educate our local governments and educate our sheriffs that this is going on.
I tell you what, if you have a board in Sanilac County that is interested in finding out what's going on, call them up. Hey, will you bring the whistleblower in, give him a half hour on one of the county board meetings?
Mm-hmm.
That's township, or city of Sandusky, city of Croswell, okay? Will you give the whistleblowers, you know, some time to come in and talk about this, what's going on? We need to see what's going on. They're altering the public records.
Mm-hmm.
This should not go on, and you know what? They're getting away with it because law enforcement is oblivious to it. Some have jumped in the pool, but many haven't. Okay, and the same thing with the prosecutors. There are some prosecutors that have jumped in the pool, and some haven't. And myself, it's not just about, we need to take a step beyond just talking about it and educating. We can sit there and educate till we're blue in the face. We need to get your local public officials PO'd, okay? They need to become angry at what the state is doing themselves, okay? Especially in these red counties, because let me tell you, they won't be red for long.
No.
Not with this corrupt process that is in place in terms of our election system. Myself, contact them. Hey, Mr. Board of Commissioners, Mr. Chair of Sanilac County Board of Commissioners, will you have the whistleblowers come in and give 30 minutes? Okay? Well, these people, how can we file the criminal complaint? And it basically can, you know what, I'm more than happy they can get my my personal email address or the Locust Standy 83 email address. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
But we need the criminal complaints, the more any additional plaintiff adds to our case. And then we need the public officials to let us come in and show the laws that are being broken.
Mm-hmm.
Most of these clerks are oblivious to what is going on. They're unaware of it, including the Sanilac County clerk, because it is being done through all these things, and they're making every excuse in the book to say we can do it because we control it. No, you can't. You have to abide by federal law and state law. They're using one election law that says the Secretary of State is the supreme, you know, and then they're using 15.243 for security issues. No, they're the ones, they're breaking the security protocol, not the public and not me or any of the other people investigating that. Sorry, didn't mean to carry on.
No, you're fine. So just two more questions. One, in the immediacy, what is your schedule looking like as far as any future proceedings? Or, I mean, you mentioned that you've got a federal lawsuit for the EPB information that's being omitted. You said it's being destroyed.
Yes, the Bureau of Elections has told these clerks, destroy those EPB raw data files. Destroy them. Destroy the flash drives. They're telling them to do it after 7 days because by law, MCL 168.813, they have to upload it by 7 days. They have 7 days to upload that EPB, which allegedly is supposed to update the history records, okay, that you voted, okay? But they're not supposed to delete it after 7 days. They're not supposed to delete it prior to the completion of a 22-month period in federal law. Again, that's you know, and it's Title 52, Section 20701 is the retention period, which is 22 months. Title 52, Section 20702 is you can't delete it or alter it within that period. Okay, that's a 22-month period. So you have two laws, federal laws applicable there. Then you get to the state laws, okay? And 811 says, 168.811, MCL 168.811 says the retention period for election material is 24 months, okay? They argue, Well, everything's printed on what's called a list of voters report. No, it isn't. It does not contain this voter ID, the original voter ID, because they're keeping another one. It doesn't contain that, and it does not contain the dynamic date timestamp. And the timestamp on the other one, the data from the Michigan Bureau of Elections, shows all zeros. They're altering it. You cannot legally do that.
And what law does that violate?
That violates MCL 750.248. And that was our first law. That law gives your local prosecutor the ability to prosecute somebody from outside Sanilac County, bring them into the county and prosecute them in Sanilac County. That is one of the unique features of that particular state statute. Is it provides what's called a venue of prosecution, gives three options. But the third one is the county in which the victims reside. Who is the victims in Sanilac County? The voters. Their public records are being altered, which means the county prosecutor has the ability to pull, I don't care whether it's Jocelyn Benson, Jonathan Brader, Lori Bourbonnais, whoever, into Sanilac County, into Sandusky, to be prosecuted there.
All right. Well, is there anything else you would like to add before we cut?
There are wonderful, 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 courageous people that have assisted this. Diane Ferguson in this county, gentleman that started We the County. He has been very, Mr. Smith, I can't remember his first name, the gentleman, his last name is Smith. He's been very helpful, but we have people all across the state that have, you know what, they're the ones stepping up. It's not the Republican Party. And you know what, this is not a Republican issue to me.
No, it's not at all.
It is, we have Democrats starting to reach out to us. They are many of them are what were once known as blue dog Democrats.
Yep.
They were social conservatives, but they were more fiscal Democrats.
Yep. They've got to go too.
It
doesn't fit in the new world.
Right, exactly. And I tell you what, this is not a party issue, but the GOP, oh, they're indicting Donald Trump. Oh, they've indicted the 16. Oh, they've indicted Matt DePerno.
This is what they want to talk about.
Sure.
Yeah.
But they don't want to participate in getting them indicted.
Mm-hmm. I've truncated the rest of the interview as it trails off topic, but I do want to quickly discuss how I'll be following up on this issue. After taking my initial findings to the Board of Commissioners at their meeting Tuesday, I had a conversation with Sanilac County Clerk Leslie Hilgendorf. After reviewing the footage of my public comments at the meeting, Leslie took it upon herself to conduct some research of her own. She confirmed that the data in these forms is being housed and maintained by the Michigan Bureau of Elections. She also informed me that the user code is still visible through her view of the document, but the software has been altered so that when they print the forms off, the column is removed. This data hasn't been destroyed, but it has been concealed. I want to thank all of you for taking the time to educate yourselves on this topic. My coverage on this issue is far from over as I plan to continue reporting on these lawsuits. Please like this video and subscribe to both our YouTube channel as well as our Facebook page to stay informed on upcoming news involving this and other issues affecting Sanilac County and Greater Michigan. To access all of the documents and evidence in this story yourself, please feel free to visit the story on the web at www.sanilacflashlight.com. Until next time, my friends, go with God and walk in the light of truth.